And then, more recently, threats to invade Greenland and the sort of world, sort of realizing suddenly that the US is maybe no longer supportive of the global rules-based world order, the world order that has been developed for decades and that has really helped advance human rights, human rights treaties, norms, institutions, the Human Rights Council, the International Criminal Court. That entire architecture is now under threat. So it's a new world that I think everybody is trying to cope with, and it's, I would say, a dangerous world for human rights. The UN Secretary General of the, Antonio Guterres sometimes describes a world on fire, and it feels very much like that. And in this world on fire, atrocity crimes are back, and that's a major factor for our work. The kind of atrocities that 20 years ago the world said we would no longer tolerate, that the international community would step in to stop, what we called at the time the responsibility to protect. All of that today is almost disappearing. And so we have raging situations of mass atrocities. One of them, of course, is the situation in Gaza and the West Bank, where the Israeli government has been committing acts of genocide, crimes against humanity, ethnic cleansing, more than 70,000 people killed since the October 7 attack, very little international reaction. And instead of pressuring the Israeli government to stop these crimes, the Trump administration is almost, cheering on in some cases, even mentioned the possibility of turning Gaza into a Riviera of the Middle East, free of Palestinians, which is essentially encouraging the continued ethnic cleansing. Ukraine is another situation of mass atrocities, and Julia will talk about it, of war crimes on a massive level, where the Trump administration is sort of minimizing the responsibility of the Russian government instead of addressing the abuses head-on. And then there is the situation in Darfur, which to me sort of is revealing of the moment in which we are, and Mausi will talk about this. But 20 years ago, when I was a young journalist at the UN, Darfur was a huge cause, and the international community was involved. The US was trying to get the International Criminal Court to investigate, was trying to get to deploy peacekeepers. Today, very, very little international reaction. In fact, the Trump administration and the Trump family is conducting mega deals on, crypto deals with the UAE, the United Arab Emirates, who are actually known, or there is increasing evidence that they are arming the rapists and the killers in Darfur. So, brave new world, mass atrocities are back, the international community is on the back foot, the UN is not doing much, is being defunded, undermined by the Trump administration, who withdrew from the Human Rights Council. The International Criminal Court that was actually created, more than 20 years ago to address this type of situations is under sanctions from the Trump administration, is, under attack by the Russian government. So it's a pretty bleak picture. Now, for us, it shouldn't be cause for despair. It should really be cause for action and for reaction. And we see that people are actually around the world rising up to really demand their rights. We see that in this country, in Minneapolis. We see people risking their lives on the streets in Iran to demand what's theirs, their rights. We see Gen Z demonstrators in Nepal, in Morocco, in Bangladesh, in other countries. But we also need governments to step up and sort of take stock of this new world. And for us, the way to fight back in a world that's now dominated by superpowers, the US, Russia, and China, who are in many ways adversaries strategically, but when it comes to undermining the rules-based world order, they have actually a joint interest in weakening that entire infrastructure, in weakening these institutions, the International Criminal Court, the UN, the Human Rights Council, because it's designed to be a check on their power. So we think that, democratic countries, middle powers around the world should band together and fight back and protect this ecosystem and protect these rights. But to be effective, it shouldn't be sort of short-term alliances. It should be an alliance that's really glued around values, around common respect for democracy, common respect for human rights. And that's the only way it will be durable and powerful. You could think about countries like Canada. The Prime Minister of Canada made a very well-received speech at the World Economic Forum, sort of capturing the mood of the moment and calling on democratic countries to come together and form an alliance to protect the rules-based world order. There are many other countries that could join an effort like that, middle powers, of course, in the European Union, but also in the global south. South Africa, Brazil would be good candidates to do that, Japan, Australia, the UK. So if all of these countries were to band together, they can provide benefits for one another in terms of trade, resisting tariffs. They can also protect each other through defense, and they have a big voting power, diplomatic power in international institutions at the Human Rights Council, the UN General Assembly. So, 2025 was the tipping point, potentially a bad year for human rights and democracy, but we are actually hopeful that 2026 could be the year of resistance and could be the year where the world fights back.
Thank you, Philippe. Juan, over to you.
Thank you, Sarah. As we have seen, the Trump administration has revived the 19th century Monroe Doctrine. And in doing so, the influence of the United States over Latin America has been undeniable. And it has been undeniably, by and large, negative for human rights and democracy across the hemisphere. In 2025, we saw Latin American governments violate the rights of migrants and asylum seekers at the behest of the Trump administration. Costa Rica and Panama arbitrarily detain Afghan women fleeing the Taliban, Iranian asylum seekers, Russian dissidents, and others who had been deported by the Trump administration. And El Salvador systematically tortured and sometimes sexually abused Venezuelan migrants deported by